Hello, and welcome to the podcast Justice for Y'all. My name is Paul Painter, and I'm here with Andrew Bowen and Stephen Morrison. We are attorneys with the firm Bowen Painter in Savannah, Georgia, and we have started this podcast to talk about kind of all things law and other things people may or may not be interested in.
Paul, I want to congratulate you on getting the name of the podcast right this time.
Thank you. I've been messing that up a lot. Yeah.
I think that a lot of prepositions will fit for that. Justice
Justice.
with y'all, justice upon y'all, justice for y'all,
Or just justice, y'all.
justice y'all.
Justice, y'all. We're probably going to have, I'm going to have to do that because I'm going to keep screwing it up otherwise.
That fits better on like a coffee mug or a t-shirt or something like that. Justice y'all.
That's a good point. All right, so welcome to Justice Y'all.
This is a very progressive law firm. We change on the fly. We adapt to the circumstances.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We managed to already lose all our listeners at that point. All three of them.
Sorry,
Mom is going to talk to you.
From here.
Anyway, we're just going to get on today, and before we start talking about some serious business, we're going to introduce ourselves and talk about our law firm and just let the folks out there know who we are. So let's start with by far the oldest member of our group, Andrew Bowen.
You're tuned into the podcast where justice meets Southern hospitality. Broadcasting directly from Savannah, Georgia, join your hosts, Paul, Stephen, and Andrew of Bowen Painter Trial Lawyers as they chat about the legal difficulties you might face in everyday life. From the ports of Savannah to the busy highways that stretch through the Southeast, we're your go-to source for all things legal. Served up with a dose of Southern charm and commitment to justice for y'all.
Yes, I'm the elder statesman here. Elder anyway. I don't know how statesman like I am. But yeah, I'm Andrew Bowen. I was born in Savannah, Georgia. Grew up in St. Simons down in Glenn County. And have been practicing law in Savannah since 1998 when I graduated from law school.
Where did you tell everybody where you went to high school, undergrad, see if you got any connections out there?
Yeah, I went to Frederica Academy on St. Simon's Island.
Sure, yeah.
Class of 1990. 21 people in my graduating class. It was a small school at the time.
Named after the fort, I guess, or was it at the fort?
It was not at the fort, but yeah, named for the fort. An aside here, there is Fort Frederica, but there was also the town of Frederica, which was developed and laid out by General James Oglethorpe, who designed the Savannah city plan with all the blocks and squares. And the town of Frederica also had the same design, just a much smaller
It is
scale.
a good design.
Yeah.
It is a good design.
But anyway, the ruins of the town of Frederica are still there. It's obviously a dead city at this point. But yeah, a little history lesson for you.
That's good.
That
I like
goes
it.
to Georgia history.
So where did you go to college?
Washington and Lee University, which is in Lexington, Virginia. If you're not familiar with it, you may be familiar with Virginia Military Institute, VMI.
Mm-hmm.
And the campuses of those two schools actually share a wall. So,
No, actually, I didn't know that. I've been partners with you for however long it's been. I've never, I don't think you've ever shared that little nugget before.
well,
Full of them.
Full of something.
A bucket of nuggets right here.
and then after Washington and Lee, I went to Mercer for law school and graduated in 1998.
Well, what did you do between? Because I think that's more interesting than law school.
I took a year off after college and went and worked on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C.
Uh-huh.
Worked for a couple of different members of the House of Representatives. Jack Kingston, who preceded our current Congressman, Buddy Carter. Jack Kingston was the congressman for the 1st District here in Georgia for years. And then also worked for another congressman from the 3rd District at the time named Mac Collins.
Very good.
Mac had the distinction at the time, I think, of being one of 2 members of Congress that had never gone to college.
Really?
Yeah, he was really a self-made guy, but a brilliant guy.
That's cool.
That is maybe something we need a little more of in some places.
That's right. That's right. Now, is that when you went sailing between those two, or was that later?
Well, that was part of the time I took off. A couple of summers in college, I worked as a crew on a bareboat sailboat charter. We did charters out of Miami, mostly for school groups and church groups and stuff. But we do week to 2 week long charters from Miami to the Bahamas. So I did that for 2 summers, and then also for a few months that I had free during that time after college and before law school. I did that.
Ever regret becoming a lawyer and not a full-time sailor?
Every day.
But the irony is you spend the law career working back to that job you had, well before you became a lawyer.
That's right. Very good. So then to Mercer Law School in Macon?
Macon, Georgia, which is a great place to go to law school because there's nothing else to do.
Plenty of time to focus.
That's right. Well, good stuff. Well, let's walk around the room before we get to for your practice history. Stephen, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
I also was born in Savannah and raised in Savannah, actually outside Savannah in a little community called Montgomery. So I am a Montgomery boy, as they're known. My dad is a commercial fisherman and runs a shrimp boat. So I grew up on the water working my dad's, but I used to go around sort of the south side islands out there on a golf cart selling shrimp as a young man. And then I bounced around a couple of different schools in Chatham County, public and private, but eventually graduated as a homeschool student and went to pretty immediately after that, went to Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, but I never actually made it on campus because they were, I don't know, I don't get a math degree, I guess, at Liberty because they admitted too many students and didn't count right. So they had to ship some of us to their online program, which was the earliest days. I mean, it was just like the transition from correspondence course to online school. Liberty had a pretty robust one and was kind of ahead of the game, particularly at the time. So I did that, and that allowed me to do some of the other things I was interested in. I spent some time in politics and ran political campaigns here in Georgia. I ran a statewide public service commission campaign, and then thought that was a great thing to do and decided I wanted to be a political consultant. So I opened up a business and did that for about a year and realized, no, I wanted to go back to college and do anything else. So I graduated. So I ended up sticking with the online thing. It allowed me to work with my dad and kind of stay in that business, stay back home here, and kind of do a little bit of the political work on the side, which was fun. And I thought I wanted to go in that direction, which kind of tipped me off towards the law. And I got to the end of my degree, which ended up being a Bachelor of Science in Religion. And I needed something that was going to make a little bit more money. So I knew I had to go to grad school and decided ultimately to go to law school, even though at the time I was going back and forth between getting a divinity degree or going to law school, but eventually decided to go to law school. And I went to...
I feel like that's the angel and the devil on your shoulder right there.
Oh,
which direction
the yin and the yang, for sure. Oh, yeah, it's exactly. It's the thermocline runs right down the middle of my body. And this could be a whole episode, but there's a lot of overlap between, I think, what ministers do and what lawyers do, whether it's textual.
It's one of the three professions.
It is
true
one of the
professions,
three true professions.
Two of the three professions.
I didn't consider medical school, but I kind of wish I had. Then I would have just been dipping my hands in all three of the professions. Couldn't claim them all, but eventually I did practice medical malpractice and became an armchair physician. So that's, I guess,
There you go.
That's
There you go.
Rounded it out in the end.
Almost the trifecta.
That's right. So what do you UGA for law school? Go Dogs.
Yes, sir.
Go Dogs.
And that was when I got more serious about becoming a lawyer. I wasn't very serious about it when I started law school, but I liked it and ended up working out.
Tell us about one thing that you were really big into growing up. I always find interesting is your scouting. Tell folks about your scouting.
It's Scouting America now. It's Boy Scouts of America at the time. I can't really quantify the impact that it had on me. I did that. I did a little bit of Cub Scouts, but I didn't really go regularly. I did the Arrow of Light ceremony, which is the crossing over from Cub Scout to Boy Scout. And then from there, I just was hooked. It was every Tuesday night. My troop is no longer there, but we met here in a church off of Skidaway and Eisenhower. I was up there every Tuesday night going, starting off at the very lowest part of the totem pole as just a scout, working my way up through the ranks, going to summer camp, getting merit badges. I learned leadership. I learned decorum. Between my wife and I'm still the better at ironing because I was in the Scouting Honor Guard. So I would go around events in Chatham County and, we'd hold the flag. And I just was a kid. I remember laying out my uniform, pressing it, putting on the white gloves. I just took it so seriously, but Scouting kind of taught me that discipline and really prepared me for a lot of things. It introduced me to a lot of people. Some are my friends, some are, they're leaders in private business or they're in office somewhere like that. It really just set me up so well for so many of the things that I ended up doing. I love it, and I still am.
And what was the highest scouting rank that you attained?
I am an Eagle Scout. Thank you. Yeah, that's a really neat brotherhood. You run into another Eagle Scout, and it's an immediate connection. It is a culmination of a lot of hard work, and every Eagle Scout has to do their Eagle Scout project. Mine is, again, here in Chatham County out at Olin Island Wildlife Center. They were building out the wolf exhibit now, which is, I think, a little bit more tired than it was at the time. It was kind of new when I did it, but helped install some shelving there and some picnic tables and some of the infrastructure around the public area that you can still go and enjoy.
Very cool.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Painter, how about you?
Well, I'm also born in Savannah and grew up here. Went to Benedictine, graduated in 1995. From there, went to University of Georgia. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Thanks, yeah.
We need
And
a button for that.
we do need a button for that. I think we can probably just throw that out there enough.
Maybe just a woof woof.
Yeah. We should just call the dogs instead of saying justice within y'all, whatever it is.
And with your spirit.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was a business major there, but as my dad liked to say, I really majored in cooler management. I think more than focused on classes,
I think
at least
you
at the
still run
beginning.
a business on the side in that.
Yeah, well, you got to do the things you love.
That's right.
Got to use your tools.
That's right. Use your tools. So I went to Georgia and graduated in 99, so I got to endure some of the football seasons the kids now will never have to endure. But had a good time there and great experience. When I got out, I did not go right to law school, but spent about 5 years in the Navy, which was an interesting time to join the service. I joined in 99 and started Officer Candidate School down in Pensacola in February of 2000, and got commissioned in May of 2000, and joined a ship that summer. I went to school. I went to some more schooling and joined a ship early the next year in 2001 and went on deployment. Of course, it was an interesting time to be in the Navy because when I went in, there was nothing going on in the world, and after been about a year and a half, 9/11 happened, and
Let me ask you this:
Yeah.
Where were you when
The world
9/11
stopped turning.
happened? And,
Yeah.
and as a military, you get this signal that goes out saying the nation's under attack.
Right.
Where were you?
I was on my ship, which is the USS Astotion, which is a frigate that's since been decommissioned, but in North Virginia, which is the largest Navy base in the world. And we were actually supposed to be in New York just then, like that day. We were supposed to be coming up the Hudson because we were going to go up to West Point and have a Navy ship there for just for the presidents and have a football game. And it got delayed a week or two. And so that day we were, I wasn't there, but the bridge team that was going to be taking the ship in was at a simulator that had us coming into New York, had them come to New York Harbor. And they were actually, doing the simulation of going up while the attack started happening. So after I was in a passageway of my ship, and all the officers on a ship kind of own, quote unquote, different parts of a ship. So there's maintenance, that kind of stuff you have to maintain. And I had this little passageway, and I had some contractor on board talking about some work we had to do. And this the sailor came up to me and said, sir, and he interrupted me. I'm like, what's up? And it's like, you got money in the market? And I was in charge of what's called the thrift savings plan, like teaching the sailors about investment. Yeah, it's still going on, I guess.
Still going on. Yeah, I got my little piece of it.
So I'm thinking he's asking me of that, and I was like, what do you ask me? And he goes, you about to lose it. And I was like, what?
And that's how he announced.
Well, he goes, plane just crashed in the World Trade Center. And I was like, nothing you just said makes sense. So I went back to what I was doing. So when I get done, I go into the wardroom, and there's a TV in there. And so I turned on, and I'm thinking, you imagine like some Cessna has crashed into it. And, of course, you see what has happened. And then, people were starting to pay attention, but it was still like, wow, what kind of crazy accident was this? And then, of course, the second plane hits. And then everything stops. And everybody's really just focused on the TV, seeing what's going on. And then we get a announcement, that comes in that says, set condition X-ray throughout the ship. And what that means is when the hatches, you have 3 different levels of your hatches. If they're wide open, like in a friendly port, so you can get in and out easier, it's one thing. Then when you're at sea, you shut them, but you still have some things open. And then the X-ray is the most secure you can have, so you got to actually open the hatch every time you want to get in and out. And so it was kind of like, ooh, we're actually because the Pentagon too, so we're in Norfolk, so it's right up the road. And we got the orders to sortie, and we never actually, it took us about 3 days. Eventually, we were on the ship for 3 days, and they sent us home to pack a sea bag and said, be ready to deploy for 6 months. And we got back, and we went out to sea, and we did a patrol up and down the East Coast, but eventually was only gone for a few weeks before they came back. But it was it was interesting because my roommate at the time was a submarine officer. My roommate, like in town, his buddy of mine was a submarine officer, and his grandfather had been at Pearl Harbor at the time of the attack. And or no, I'm sorry, he wasn't at Pearl Harbor. He was stationed at Norfolk at the time of the Pearl Harbor attack. And we were kind of comparing notes of what it was like in the month after, and it was almost identical. Everything we were saying was just it was almost no difference, which was nuts. But
Well, interesting. My father, as you know, went to the Naval Academy, and he was actually standing bridge watch on the destroyer in Norfolk when John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
oh wow,
And within about an hour, they had orders to immediately put to sea, and they took off and were patrolling because at the time there's so much as uncertainty.
didn't know it was the first attack on the United States.
Right. So probably a very similar experience there.
Paul, what was your role in the Navy?
Right. I was a surface warfare officer, which is basically a ship driver, sort of. And I was on a frigate and an LPD, which is what sort of put the Marines on the ground. But what old school you'd think of as like a tin can sailor, not a pilot, but we'd drive the ships, we do combat, we do the engineering within the ship. And the specific jobs I had, I was a navigator on the first ship, which was a really great job. I enjoyed that very much. And I was the assistant operations officer on my second ship, and and it was the boarding officer. So I'd have a team of 12 guys at that time. That if we had to go board, get on a small boat or rib and take them over to another ship to board it and inspect it, that's what we would do.
So you were not grappling hooks over the ship and swinging across.
No, I kept asking to train on that, but they wouldn't.
In a different era.
That's right. Well, we did have grappling hooks if we had to throw up there to climb.
See?
Yeah, so somebody would climb up and put a Jacob's ladder down. So there was that aspect. So it wasn't totally gone.
I say this because I did not serve in the Navy, but I did grow up on a boat. We didn't call it a ship, but maybe it would have qualified. But we had one grappling hook, and as a kid, that was my favorite implement on the boat, and I would do all kinds of Pirates of the Caribbean type things. But
I did have a sword, and I've got two boys who are 5 and 7, and my Navy sword is still in. I've got a home office, and it's in there, and they think it's the neatest thing. They are convinced that I fought pirates with it, and they're at a phase right now where every night, when I put them to bed, they say, "Dad, tell us a Navy stories."
Oh, that's.
I'm starting to run out of stories, to be honest with you.
You can make them up now.
Well, that's true. That's true. Don't tell them, but some of them I'm expanding the truth on just a little bit.
It sounds like
you did actually see combat during Operation Desert Storm.
No, we were part of. I never saw combat, which I'm fine with, but I was part of the invasion of Iraq. We it was in that LPD, and we put the Marines on the ground and. Actually held Iraqi prisoners on our ship for a little bit until they established prisons on ground. So we were a mile offshore, and I slept on a gas mask as a pillow for about a month because at that point, everybody thought the WMD were there, and that was mostly going to be sarin gas and that kind of stuff. And there were in the first Gulf War, Saddam had mined the waters right outside of Iraq, so we kind of didn't know what we were getting into exactly. But as it turned out, it was not. Much of a Navy war, and which was in hindsight just fine with me, but no. So we were part of the invasion. We were there for a few months, and then we, a little bit more than that. Then we loaded up our Marines and went on back to San Diego.
All right.
Combat being engaged with the enemy versus you were.
I never got shot at. I'm a war veteran because I was part of the war and involved with it. But no bullet heading my direction. I could hear them, but they didn't come towards me, and I'm fine. That's okay.
That.
Yeah.
As far as you know, if your ship had launched a missile, would that have been considered combat?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure. The ship I was on didn't have missiles, so it was a non-factor. We were a helicopter pad, had a significant helicopter pad, and we had it was one of those ships that you sink the rear end of it, and the vessels coming in and out. So we were, but we were not an attack ship per se. Though it was interesting, I did get to play some brinksmanship with Iran when we were leaving.
Casual.
I mean, who doesn't do that? So we were leaving the Gulf, and we had a convoy of ships, and we were the last ship of 5, and I was the officer of the deck as we entered the Straits of Hormuz, and for the first maybe half of the strait. And the officer of the deck is the person who's like standing in lieu of the captain on the bridge of the ship and sort of in charge of everything on the ship, under the captain's orders. And so, the job is basically to make sure we're in line where we're supposed to be. Obviously, Strait Hormuz is like 12 miles wide. Iran claims the whole thing as their own. It's international waters to everybody else, but there's always that conflict. And so we were doing that, and out comes an Iranian frigate, and we're the last in line of our convoy ships. And it gets off our port quarter, which is kind of attack position. You get into quarter, behind the quarter of somebody's ship to attack them. And they're telling us, vessel, you're in American ship, basically you're in Iranian waters. And I got to get the bridge-to-bridge radio and say, Iranian vessel off our, port quarter, this is United States Warship 8, back off, we're in international waters. And we sat there for about a minute, and then that ship just kind of pulled off and went back home. And I thought,
That'll get
well,
the
that was
radar.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Sounds
Paul,
like conflict.
thank you for your service.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
thank you, Paul.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, guys, we're already well into this introduction. We haven't even talked about our law careers much, but how about briefly?
Everybody is probably grateful for that, but we should probably cover our experience.
that's what we're here to talk about. So let's just say briefly, what brought you to law school, and tell us a little bit about your career, and let's maybe take the same route. Andrew, what brought you to law school?
Yeah, well, I wanted to be a lawyer.
Good reason.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
But seriously, I had wanted to be a lawyer as far back as I can remember. My grandfather was a lawyer and a judge, and was actually a U.S. attorney here in Savannah for a number of years, and that was just very influential on me growing up, and that's what I decided very early on I wanted to do as well. So that was my decision to go to law school.
And did you come back to the state of Georgia for a reason, or was it just that's where you wanted to go?
Well, yes, he went to Mercer.
Oh, okay.
And had arranged that if I wanted to go to Mercer, he would help me with that.
Yeah.
He passed away by the time I went, but that was a big part of my decision.
Sure.
To do that. And then after law school, I went to work here in Savannah for an insurance defense firm here in town that did a lot of general insurance defense, everything from car wrecks to premises liability, and did a lot of medical malpractice defense. And that's how I sort of got my introduction to that area of law. From there, I went to a plaintiff's firm with a law firm here in town who did a lot of medical malpractice plaintiff's work, and worked there for a number of years. And briefly went out on my own. Had another firm approach me to go work for them, so I did that for a couple of years. That situation did not work out. We will not mention any names with that. And after that, another lawyer and I left that firm, started our firm, where we sort of started working with you on an informal basis, and eventually that firm became Bowen Painter.
Yeah, I rent space from you. That's how we
right.
started doing that.
Landlord.
That's right.
Paul, why don't you go next?
Sure. Well, I was about halfway through my Navy career, and I realized that I enjoyed my time, but I didn't want to do it my full 20. And so I started thinking, well, what do I want to do with my life? And about that time, my grandfather passed away, and my grandfather had been a judge up in Walker County, Georgia, which is right up at the Chattanooga border on the other side of the state from where we are, of course. And he had been sort of a mentor to a lot of lawyers and judges throughout the years, and a lot of them came to his funeral, including then the Chief Justice of the Georgia Supreme Court and some other members of that court. And I got to meet a lot of these folks through that experience, and was just really impressed by everybody I met. I liked them. I thought they were just impressive people. And I remember what the family did is they designated all the lawyers and judges who attended the funeral as honorary pallbearers, and they lined the way from the little chapel to the hearse and the limousines when the family left. And I remember very well walking through this line of people and looking around and just immediately realizing this is a group of people I want to be part of. And, my dad was a lawyer. Granddad was, so it wasn't like it was a foreign thing, but I never really thought this is my path necessarily until that day. And so I decided to go, take the LSAT. Didn't tell my parents I was doing it. Of course, I'm, grown man at that point, but didn't have to. But I was, sort of wanted to make sure that I could get into law school before I went and told anybody about it. And so took, took the LSAT and, did fairly well. And so then I went and told my dad about it and, told him what I've been thinking and all these things and what I did on the LSAT. And I said, I'm not asking for your help or anything, but I just want to let you know I was doing. And he listened to me, and I've been very nervous to give this speech, for a while. And he sat and he thought, and he said, well, have you considered the restaurant business? And his old mentee from his firm, our good friend Sally Akins, and I told that story. She loves it. We still joke when we're having a bad day. It's like, should have gone the restaurant business, Akins,
There's
Well,
some days.
I will say that there are easier ways to make a living than being a lawyer.
Yeah,
It's rewarding. It can be financially rewarding, but there are easier ways to do it.
Yeah,
there is.
the
Yeah.
judge that I worked for said, this made him a good judge, but he said, being a lawyer is a very difficult way to make a living.
Well, it's my dad used to say it's besides professional sports, it is the only other career in America. If you're a trial lawyer of any ilk, that for you to win, somebody else has to lose. It's a zero-sum game. If you're making widgets, you can be the third best widget maker and still do great. If you're the second best lawyer in the courtroom or have the second best case, you're losing. So it's an odd way to make a living. Yeah.
Yeah, Dale Earnhardt called that second place the first loser.
There you go.
Stephen, what about you?
I went to law school, so I hinted at it a little bit in one of the episodes. I grew up in a family with no lawyers. I mean, I'm not even sure where in the family tree I could find another lawyer. There may be one, but I just didn't have a lot of exposure to the career of lawyer. I obviously knew what they were. And my family had lawyers involved at different levels. I won't go into detail, but our family had some exposure to lawyers, but it wasn't always positive. It put it on my radar, and I think for my mom too, she recognized some skills that I had that might be well suited to that. I think the classic one, oh, you like to argue and things like that. But I was interested in leadership. I was interested in government and politics, and I was also interested in ministry too. And believe it or not, I mean, one of the ways that a lot of older classical ministers became trained in their profession is they actually trained in the law. So I decided to go to law school kind of for a combination of those reasons, on top of the fact that I had a degree in religion and I wanted something a little bit more firm so I could make money if I needed to do that at some point in my life. So I started that at Georgia. I didn't take it too seriously. I thought I would never be a lawyer, actually practice law, but I got into law school, and not only did I enjoy it and I made some good friends, but I turned out to be pretty good at it, and kind of figured things out. And so that kind of opens up in law school. There are just tracks, and they kind of put you on the conveyor belt, and depending on where you're at, you just kind of can stay on that conveyor belt, and it will just kind of shift you through the different things, from starting your first year to moot court to law review to summer associateship at X firm, and then job afterward, clerkship. And so I was kind of just following these paths and these doors that were opening to me, and finding I liked it more and more. And I eventually graduated from law school. I went to work at a big law firm in their Washington, D.C. office. I had a clerkship where I worked for a federal judge in Atlanta, Chief Judge Tim Batten. I came back after a year of big law practice to work for him for 2 years, which that was just an incredible experience. And I besides like Boy Scouts and a few other things, my clerkship really formed me as a lawyer. It taught me what a trial lawyer was, because my judge was a trial lawyer before he got on the bench, and he really immersed his clerks into the courtroom and wanted them to learn every bit and piece and practice of it, rather than just sitting back taking notes and typing bench memos. He put us into the fray. We helped manage discovery disputes and were involved in mediations. So that opened my eyes to, at that time, I wanted to be a trial lawyer. Still didn't really know what that meant, but I had a sense. Went back to the big law firm, this time in Minnesota, because I met my wife at that point, and she was going to law school up there. So I transferred to our office in Minneapolis, practiced there for a couple of years, decided I wanted to not go after the partnership track, which is the time I jumped off the conveyor belt that I had been on for a while at that point, and started finding a different path. I became an assistant United States attorney down here and did that for a little while, but the practice of being a government lawyer didn't suit where I was at in my stage of life or my personality at the time. We had a kid, and that just changed, my mathematical calculus. So I really enjoyed that job. It's really incredible experience and great folks. But, I found you guys and had my eye towards plaintiff's practice. That's when my whole career had been defense focused, working for big companies or defending the government. And we started a conversation, and I think you guys saw my interest in plaintiff's law, and you guys were doing it at the level that I thought I would like to do it, and that brought me here.
All right.
We're proud to have you.
Glad to be
Absolutely.
here.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's another episode of Justice for Y'all.
Well,
Justice
first one.
within y'all.
Justice, y'all.
Thanks for listening to Justice for Y'all, hosted by the attorneys here at Bowen Painter Trial Lawyers in Savannah, Georgia. If today's episode resonated with you, or if you find yourself needing legal guidance, remember, we're just a call away. You don't have to work through the difficulties of your situation alone. Visit our website at bowenpainter.com, that's BOWENPAINTER.com, or give us a call at 912-335-1909. We're here to serve you with the dedication and warmth only true Southern hospitality can offer. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you don't miss an episode. And tell your friends and family about us if they're ever in need of some legal insight. Take care, and remember that at Bowen Painter Trial Lawyers, we're committed to justice for y'all.